welcome to Neurodivergent Stories. This is your director, George Muniz. In this documentary, what I'm trying to do essentially is tell stories of neurodivergent experiences from the inside. To give a very brief definition, a neurodivergent person is anyone that has a style of brain functioning that deviates from societal norms and expectations. Neurodiversity in general celebrates different ways of being and existing and functioning and communicating and processing and interacting with the world. Neurodivergent is an umbrella term. So it encompasses anything from autism, ADHD, dyslexia to OCD, PTSD, anxiety, depression. Not every neurodivergence is inherently good or bad. It is a deviation from the societal norms and expectations and standards. Everyone's going to experience different types of neurodivergence, sometimes overlapping differently. With that in mind, I wanted to tell the story of not just high masking neurodivergence, but particularly high masking neurodivergence, or the parts of our neurodivergence that usually people don't see from the outside. I want to tell that not just through my experience, but through the experience of a lot of different really great people that I've met over the past few years through mostly online support groups, and a few other people that I knew already. And so I really wanted to share their stories and highlight this inside perspective that is not usually seen. We see a lot of things talking about particularly autism and ADHD, talking about it from the outside, but not enough talking about from the inside. That's what I wanted to really share in this documentary.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, hi there. My name is Chris Shield.
I'm Majestic.
I'm Kelsey.
My name is Alexander Rakovshik.
My name is Xenia Rakovshik.
I'm Ashra.
My name is George Gund.
My name is George Muniz.
I am autistic.
Autistic.
I am autistic and I have ADHD.
Autistic and ADHD.
I have ADHD, as well as I've been diagnosed to be on the autism spectrum.
Also diagnosed ADHD.
I have ADHD.
I'd say that one of the first differences I noticed early on in comparison to my peers was a struggle to make connections and friendships.
I had trouble connecting with other people around me.
As a toddler, I didn't want hugs, I didn't want to snuggle. It was kind of too much for me.
Sometimes I would bring extra math problems to class to do during downtime so I wouldn't have to talk to my peers.
I had a handful of friends in school, but no like super duper duper close friends. And I always felt a little bit like I was left out.
I always internally felt different. I always felt like an alien. That's kind of a word that I use to describe how I felt. I felt like nothing was my home. Like there was no place where I felt like I could completely be myself. I always felt ever so slightly
It's like trying to speak another language. It's never going to be your first language.
disconnected or ever so slightly different, even if it was in a way that I couldn't describe or put my finger on.
I always felt kind of out of sync with the rest of the world.
Because it feels like everyone around me, even from the age of kindergarten or whatnot, everyone spoke this sort of the secret code or language that they all used to make friendships with each other, and I had a struggle understanding that and how they communicated. The way I communicated was different.
As opposed to other people my age who could just seamlessly interact with others.
I remember hearing myself get excited and talk over someone and feeling terrible right afterward. I knew what I had done wrong. I just knew.
Imagine that you're driving a car or riding a bicycle, and it immediately starts going 20 miles an hour.
I'm going faster than I could possibly imagine. I'm trying to constantly catch up with my brain.
Like as soon as you turn on the engine, you're off.
I'm trying to slow myself down and failing.
And If you're in an environment where everyone is supposed to be going 20 miles an hour, it's smooth and comfortable and seamless, and you don't think anything's wrong. But when you're trying to park a car at 20 miles an hour,
And even though I was really trying, I was just not capable of doing it.
it's very challenging. Or if you're trying to go 50, 60, 70, that can also be challenging because you're constantly going at that speed, even in situations where it's ill-advised.
In retrospect, people around me outside of my family didn't always know that I couldn't help it. They thought I was attention seeking, or I wasn't minding everyone's time or giving them space.
My family was writing it off as she's just young or she's just being childish.
People called me weird because of the way that I spoke. People called me weird because of the way that I dressed or because of the things that I liked to talk about.
I'm unique, I'm different, the Kelsey way of doing things.
You're so young and you get so much negative feedback from people at a young age, which is much more likely if you're neurodivergent. That anxiety builds up.
I was experiencing a lot of sensory issues at home.
Clothes and the way they fit, the way that they feel on me.
Aversions to different types of food.
Physical touch, and I still do. Because autistic children grow up into autistic adults.
I had a terrible time trying to focus.
A lot of that is because of attention regulation problems, which is what ADHD is. It's not lack of attention, it's regulation problems.
Prioritize myself, learn how to get things done. Anytime I was given a task, it would take forever and a huge amount of mental effort to actually just get myself over at least the first step, to the point where I would just start to feel what felt like physical pain throughout my body trying to do it. But over time, I got pretty good at things like masking.
Masking.
Frankly, I would come home from work just dead tired every single day. And, looking back, it was from masking.
Just learning how to stare people in the eye.
Oftentimes, I felt compelled to force eye contact. If I try to look at someone's eyes when they're talking to me, I'm going to be putting all that mental effort into that, and I am unable to understand what they're saying.
Just learning how to mimic them.
Mimicking facial expressions and behaviors.
To mirror the hobbies of people around me instead of going into my own hobbies and hyperfixating on them.
They called me weird because of my interests.
Because people would tell me that I was too interested in my special interests.
Learning how to adjust my effects and dialect depending on who I was talking with.
All sorts of things to I guess try and blend in, not draw too much attention to myself.
And just let me blend in.
To just be quiet. To just not say anything, because that was the best chance of not making a mistake.
It was more about treating the inappropriate behavior.
To find ways of making sure that even if I fucked up, which everyone does.
The very phrase inappropriate behavior assumes an appropriate behavior.
I needed to create a kind of cushioning of goodwill around me.
I never had accommodations. I just struggled my way through everything.
I tried in so many ways to shift and morph and transfigure myself into something that was more acceptable.
Which led to burnout, overwhelm, overstimulation.
Being overstimulated.
I just felt overwhelmed, stimulation-wise, by the world around me, definitely more than other people.
My nervous system was absolutely shot.
Growing up, I felt the moment slipped when I couldn't help my ADHD. All of a sudden, it felt like everything else I had done, every other amount of effort I had put into trying to do my best didn't matter anymore. It was a terrible feeling.
On the mental and emotional level,
I wasn't really coping.
I started using marijuana, which helped me sort of regulate my internal mental speed.
Unfortunately, and I don't recommend this, I started to slowly realize, even though at the beginning it was unintentional, if I didn't feed myself quite enough, I wasn't seeming to annoy other people as much. I wasn't talking over people, in part because my brain was eating itself.
Pretty unhealthy relationship with food, my body image, my self-esteem.
It also gave me a way of regulating dopamine through food, which, again, do not recommend.
Pretty self-destructive, impulsive, and reckless behaviors.
I made myself sick. I made myself smaller to make it easier for people to be around me, which in some ways backfired majorly.
There are side effects to any medication, especially if it's one that is self-prescribed by someone in their teenage years.
I overexercise.
I would regulate my own anxiety and nervous system from a young age was to overexercise. That was the problem with my coping mechanisms, is that they were about control, and they were applauded by people around me in my early 20s because it made me productive. And also, I'm a woman.
And I kind of started to look at everything as right or wrong.
Everything about being a young woman is about controlling yourself.
I realized I was neurodivergent in a two-part journey. The first part was when I was hospitalized for bipolar, which I was misdiagnosed with.
Some therapists over the years threw out some potential diagnoses for me. I got diagnosed with 5 different subtypes of OCD. I think any OCD tendencies that I have come from potentially the rigidness of my autism.
And the second part was when I started working with kids with autism, which was a recommendation that somebody working in the hospital made to me while I was there.
I went to school for psychology. It was kind of this attempt at understanding myself through the lens of understanding other people.
So I started to work with kids with autism.
It was during my master's when I started to learn about autism and neurodivergence.
And I noticed that I had a really easy time connecting with them.
I realized that it sounded a lot like me.
I was realizing that I struggled with all the same aspects of life as the children I was working with.
All the things I learned about non-stereotypical presentations of autism sounded a lot like me.
Starting to wonder, do the people around me realize that I am like these kids when I didn't even realize it, and not knowing what to do.
I ended up doing my master's thesis on it.
Part of the reason why working with kids with autism opened my eyes to my own neurodivergence was because I realized what it was like to actually experience autism from their perspective, to see the sensory issues that come with autism, all the things that go beyond the stereotypes of how inconvenient autism is for other people.
I did so much work at understanding the DSM-5 criteria for autism. I learned so much from other creators. I read so much literature. I interviewed autistic women and learned about them for my thesis. And in the end, it just felt so right.
I started to actually learn about autistic people and see autism as a culture, not just a medical label.
And I ended up self-diagnosing after some time.
And that's where I started to recognize that I fit into this group and I fit into this culture.
I was not diagnosed autistic until I was 36 years old.
My autism diagnosis did come as quite a surprise.
Yeah, I guess it was. It was 8 years ago.
It kind of blindsided me.
We were moving into our new house. We had to move quickly because of some other circumstances.
I was barely an adult when I became a mom.
But I was not ready for it.
I was just really struggling.
I was paralyzed with anxiety and fear.
Which then led into almost like an identity crisis for a little while.
I knew something was wrong. I don't know if it was wrong, but I knew, like, okay, this shouldn't have happened.
The reason that I went to go get a diagnosis in the first place was after my youngest was born, my mental health kind of took a nosedive. Not because of her or anything that has to do with parenting, but all the expectations that you have in life while also trying to care for a newborn and children. It was just too much.
I waited about 7 months to get in line to be evaluated.
Me and my family looked at so many different areas to try to figure out what was going on with me. I went to a concussion doctor. We thought I might have had early dementia. Maybe if I get my nutrition and my exercise in order. I've tried every productivity hack, sleep hack, routine, all with marginal improvements, but I was still having what I know now are meltdowns.
And it was pretty obvious. The clinician there was pretty clear that I had autism.
I thought maybe it's the ADHD wreaking havoc on me. I finally arrived at a practice full of psychologists that specialized in ADHD and autism. I'm gonna go get an evaluation and just see what they say. So I laid everything on the table and I was like, here's everything that I'm experiencing. Here's my whole life story. Do what you will with it. Spoiler alert, my primary diagnosis is autism.
I started reading about neurodivergence and specifically reading about autism, going through all the traits, the way it presented itself. And I said, wow, this could be the answer for a lot of things that happened over the years.
And so then everything finally started making sense.
I got diagnosed with ADHD quite young, probably about 5 or 6, which is quite unusual.
Especially when you're somebody who is twice exceptional, gifted kid. I think it made it that much harder to get diagnosis. It was the 90s. We didn't know what we didn't know.
It still is.
The psychologist said something along the lines of, my life story is very much classic high masking girl with autism. That honestly explained so much of what I've ever experienced and just been through.
Most young girls don't get diagnosed with ADHD.
Especially when I'm high masking and struggling and in burnout. That's when I see that most.
The reasons that I got diagnosed. My 1.5 year younger brother exhibiting signs of being on the spectrum.
Specifically in regards to at least what you used to be called before pervasive developmental disorder, PDD.
He was about 2 or 3.
I have grown up in Russia 16 years, lived in the UK 2 years after that, and ever since then have been in the US. Each context of each country has been a little bit different.
We were living in Russia at the time, and my mother quite prudently noticed that my brother was showing signs of possibly being on the spectrum, even with the little information that anyone had, and sought help. Of course, in Russia they dismissed her. They told her that it's just boys, and you're a daughter who talks too much anyway. They're just different, you know. It's okay, boys do this. She got my brother an autism diagnosis. Then we checked the entire family because it's a genetic thing. After I was tested by child specialists, along with my brother, they came back to my mum and dad and said, well, she doesn't seem to be on the spectrum, but there's a reason that she can't shut up when she sits down.
I also couldn't keep up with at the same pace with language development, and that's been a consistent problem.
For those like myself that maybe had speech delays early on, but then did develop speech.
Where originally when I was very, very young, I spoke Russian primarily. And then the therapist that my family had found to help take care of me spoke English. So then English became my primary language. And that's where I developed my skills. And my Russian started to suffer and is now not as proficient as my English.
And to me, I wouldn't exactly say it's a happy thing, because quite frankly, it's a lot more challenging to be autistic in this world. But really, knowing that I'm autistic has been an extremely positive thing in my life.
It was the most life-changing, the most significant life moment for me.
It explains why I feel the way I do about certain things.
It was like the most affirming thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. It gave me one little packaged up, clean answer.
It gives me an answer.
People are so unaware of how autism presents in girls and women.
There's very little awareness of autism in adults.
I self-diagnosed.
I identify myself as neurodivergent.
But that didn't really feel like enough for me, though it is enough. If you are self-diagnosed, you're welcome and valued, and you're a valid part of this community.
I was met with a lot of dismissal, just from family members, friends, everyday people.
But for me, it didn't feel like enough because of how high masking I was.
Therapists who said I couldn't be autistic because I make eye contact and have empathy.
I felt like I needed a professional confirmation for my own sake and to get other people to believe me.
But it also brought a lot of really difficult emotions and brought on a bigger wave of burnout than I could have ever prepared for.
So that was a lot.
Of course, there was a lot of other stuff that came along with it.
I had to accept a lot of things about myself that I had tried to hide.
Understanding what that means in the context of my life.
Processing everything that I've ever been through a whole new lens, all this new information that honestly explained so much of what I've ever experienced and just been through.
It turns out all along I never had to hide those things about myself.
Dealing with that knowledge and trying to find acceptance.
I could have accepted myself, and that made me angry.
Understanding that this is something I'm always gonna feel because I'm always gonna be autistic. That's not something that will ever change. Trying to find an identity within that has been a struggle.
Even when I was leaving a domestic violence situation, I was told not to talk about autism as being part of the reason I was being abused, because I wouldn't be taken serious. Part of the reason I was able to get out of that domestic violence situation was the fact that I realized being autistic meant that the things that I had been experiencing were not just happening to me.
Just in general, societally, I have a bit of grievance of like the way I feel like autistics are oftentimes made to adapt to societal norms and constructs in place.
I realized I had been experiencing a form of discrimination my whole life.
I feel like Autism is unfortunately still a bit more stigmatized.
It's gotten better over time, I will say that.
I feel hesitant, particularly to tell people that I'm autistic.
In regards to whether I would share this information with other people, most of the time I wouldn't be sharing this background because
People usually haven't had much exposure to autistic people.
if you tell someone you're autistic, one of their first thoughts will be, oh, Rain Man.
Maybe non-speaking children with higher support needs.
And that just sort of set, I guess you could say, a high public perception standard for people on the spectrum, where they were viewed as, oh, your skills at social or anything like that might be underdeveloped. However, that must mean you're a genius or a prodigy, right?
Very little, almost never does it happen where I feel like the other party is making an effort to understand my communication style.
You could just do these amazing things other people can't do. No, it doesn't work like that. That specific scenario tends to be more rare than common. I might be slightly better at pattern recognition, stuff like that, than others, but I am not a prodigy. I'm not a genius. I would not share that with other people because they would assume that. Or they would start handling me with white gloves, thinking I need delicate handling, which was not necessarily the point and would cause issues. It would not help me get what I wanted, and they would assume that they're trying to do something on behalf of me when I didn't need it.
There's something to neurodivergent people just not giving a shit. We do give a shit. We really do. A lot of us can't help it. But there's something to just going, you know what? I'm not for you. And I'm not sorry about that.
It's important to understand how much more information there is in 2025 than there was in 1990 or even 1999, and certainly in the early 1970s.
We need to be acknowledged that we're there, that we're here, and that, yeah, we may not be able to conform to everything you want us to conform to.
And so now understanding that I have an actual disability, disabilities are disabling. I don't push myself nearly as hard as I used to.
I was able to actually understand myself. Suddenly I had a manual of these are things that you can do to make yourself comfortable.
I realized whatever was different about me, whatever wasn't encapsulating, I had now some control.
I really prioritize my rest, recharging, and really staying within my window of tolerance.
Depending on what your energy levels are, which will fluctuate from day to day.
To be able to reset and calm down.
I'm in a situation when I'm in sensory overload, instead of forcing myself to push through it,
Something I never even knew was possible.
try to get away from it, and I'll acknowledge that this is what's going on for me.
Finding a dark or quiet place.
Sometimes even if I can't get away from it right away, just knowing that that's what's going on.
I wasn't even aware of how much discomfort I was in.
Being able to have some music on backup, and usually I had a playlist that's called Nuclear Cool Down.
I feel like my whole life, I've been some degree of overwhelmed, overstimulated, pushed beyond my limits, uncomfortable. And I was like, I don't want to live like that anymore.
It also gives me a little more kindness and understanding towards myself.
Make me kinder and gentler to myself.
Have more acceptance and grace for myself.
It takes a lot of grace for yourself and for other people that you have to remind yourself of to feel that way. I don't always feel that way, but as I get older, I do.
I feel so much more at peace and happy and content and at ease.
Now I understand who I am.
Which has never been the case my entire life.
Now I don't hate myself.
And I'm not only proud of myself, I'm excited. I'm excited to learn how much more myself I can become.
And now I can find community
and share that with other people.
I've been able to start editing a digital webzine for neurodivergent and non-binary artists called Hallowzine.
We do want to be a part of things.
It's a place where it's not based on your ego or who you look like, but just a chance for us to share our special interests and our passions in a way that is celebrated.
We're starting to slowly see more understanding, more accepting.
One thing I am incredibly grateful for and understand that I am privileged with is my immediate family. My immediate family is and has always been this miasma of differences and stimming and singing and trying to organize things and having it not work and having different brains, and that's just what I grew up with. There was an understanding. And the fact that other people don't get that, when it's not even deserve, it's a right. Deserve to me implies that you do something to earn understanding. Deserve has a prerequisite that you've explained enough, that you've put in enough effort. It feels incorrect.
What is the neurodivergent experience like from the inside? Or curiosity, what are some good ways of accommodating neurodivergent people instead of trying to treat or fix them?
Just give us the supports we need. That's it.
I feel like moving towards a paradigm of really trying to understand. I'm happy that we're starting to see a shift in that direction.